Okay, well, we'll go ahead and get started. I'm Mitch Collier. I'm a director in the product management group, and Jim Allen is our architect for our software development team. And today we're going to go through Krames on FHIR, which kind of walking through our whole, from initial concept all the way through the validation with EHR app stores and implementations with customers, and just talk about our experiences on kind of building a smart on FHIR app and what were some of the things that we had and kind of going all the way through the implementation process. So just a little background. StayWell, we are a provider of patient education. So we've been around for about 40 years. We typically provided our content with customers. This is something that's delivered via a quarterly file, or we have some standalone applications. We're integrated with Epic, Cerner, Allscripts, really most of the EHRs, use our education. And most of it is kind of static content, but we also have a large portion where we develop videos, multimedia, and other applications. Customers right now, as I said, primarily use this kind of quarterly upload process, and we've been working on developing some different applications that were standalone, but clinicians really wanted to have that integrated experience. So really, some of the business problems we were looking to tackle with our application was that the content upload process, on a quarterly basis, could take up to 25 or 30 hours per quarter for those IT groups. It's not just uploading the files, but they have to validate on the different versions. They have to go through the metadata. And this is something that those IT groups are really overtaxed right now on resources. And so a lot of times that patient education could be out of date. And so customers really wanted to have kind of more real-time, always current content. And the patient education sections in the EHR, sometimes these are kind of older parts of the application. And as you can see here at the conference, there are quite a number of initiatives. So the patient education area is something that exists today, but customers wanted to start including things like videos and programs, assessments, being able to prescribe those to the patients in that discharge process, and not just have kind of flat content, things that are appended to that after visit summary. So this is really a perfect application for us for using Krames, a smart on FHIR application. And so we developed what's called Krames on FHIR, which this is integrated right into the workflow for discharge or for the patient education processes within the EHR. We have on our application, and we'll talk through more detail on the FHIR resources we use, but we pull in the active conditions from the problem list, the active medications and procedures from the past year, and we provide recommended patient education for the clinician to be able to add to the after-visit summary or to provide to that patient. Really, the goals here was to have real-time content and really removing the need to have those quarterly upload processes, to really have more of a modern user interface, and then to be able to record the history of what patient education was given to that patient, added to that after-visit summary, or sent out to the patient portals, and always make sure that that's recorded for meaningful use purposes and others. I'm not going to go through a demo of the application here because today is really more about kind of our experience in developing this, but you can go to the Smart Health IT site. There's a demo available where you can go play with the application. Jim and I are here for the rest of the day. I'm happy to walk through that with you, and feel free to reach out to me if you'd like more information about that. So really just the integration is fairly straightforward, is that we launch the application using OAuth 2 to authenticate. We have a single sign-in, and it's within that same window for the clinician. So it really looks like just another screen as part of that discharge workflow. We pull over FHIR, we pull the conditions, and we just really pull the active problems off the problem list. We pull anything that's tagged as an active medication, and then again, procedures from the last year. From within our application, we would then index all of our content and videos are indexed to all the various clinical codes. So as part of that meaningful use recommendation that we would show only the content available to particularly those codes. And then the clinician has the ability to either print that or publish that out to the MyChart or the Cerner portal. And then the history is then written back into the EHR. So we have the exact version, the language, and really the point in time of what document was given to that customer. And so here on the right back, we use standard FHIR APIs to launch the application. And then writing back, it kind of varies by EHR. We do support the document resource to be able to publish that back in. On Epic, we're using the HL7 transcription API, but they'll be supporting the document resource later this summer. And then the other EHRs as well. So, the goal for us is to really be able to have really fully support the the FHIR standards, both from launching the application and writing it back into the EHR. So really want to talk through some of the development stages that we had, going through prototyping, what was our experience in working with those customers, going through the application development, the EHR validation process, and working, getting our application validated for the app stores, and then the implementation process with customers. So first of all, prototyping, this is something that, for any of you that are working on the Smart on FHIR applications, it really helped us a lot through the later stages to do a lot of early validation with our customers. And particularly, I think, going through with clinicians, walking through those workflows, how they use the application today in the EHR. This really helped us later in stages with that validation process with Epic and Cerner, because we had a lot of client feedback. We talked through a lot of the specifics of where they wanted it to launch, how they wanted to use it. And it helped a lot as we kind of went out to other customers and getting as many clinicians to really give us feedback, to kind of test out clickable prototypes, and kind of making sure that by the time we kind of got through the rollout, that we'd really done a lot of early, having people just kind of beat on the application to make sure that it was doing exactly what people wanted it to do as part of that workflow. We went through the workflow integration. This is something that is having this application embedded within the EHR and having it look like another screen. Not just testing it just standalone, but really testing it kind of within how it would look within the EHR. And user experiences vary between the EHRs. They vary, even sometimes how people configure that. And so making sure that we designed it in a way that would really seamlessly work for those customers. And clinicians are very attached to their workflows. And if there's even just some slight text that's confusing or a button that's confusing, clinicians aren't shy about letting us know when that's not working for them. So I would really urge you as you're going into this area to get as much early customer feedback, as I'll talk about kind of later in the validation process, and that was something that really worked well for us. So I'm going to hand it over to Jim. We'll talk about some of the application development here.
Good morning. So as I'm sure some of you are familiar, FHIR is using OAuth and the SMART protocol to authenticate and authorize resources and scopes. So we're using those. The FHIR resources that we're using are patient context, conditions, medications and procedures, and the write back is in some cases the complexity here, depending on the EHR. Some of them are using proprietary write back, and some of them are using standard FHIR write back, and hopefully everyone's going to coalesce around the protocol here at some point. And so for authentication, standard OAuth handshake, write once, use everywhere, kinda. I mean, that's the goal, but it's as I said, in real life, it's not necessarily the case. For Cerner, exchanging just a standard JOT token. Epic's using a proprietary access token, and they both handle refreshes, which is nice. So as I mentioned, we're using the patient and user scopes. Write access is limited to the document reference resource, unless you're talking about Epic. Our lessons that we've learned so far, really managing your calls and caching where necessary, where possible, is really key here. I think that GraphQL, as more EHRs enable GraphQL, it's really going to help us being able to create those composite views that sometimes take 2 or 3 calls. That I'm really excited for that, and I'm hoping that happens soon. Hint, Epic and Cerner. And we were very early in the process. We were one of the first smart apps in general, and it was cool, but I mean it was hard. I mean the EHRs are learning, we were learning. The community was growing. The community is great, as everyone knows. You know, you're here, but it's still, everyone is learning, and still today, there's things are changing. We're learning, and everyone's learning together, which is cool. And the EHRs are busy. I mean, they're like trying to turn the Titanic. The same with us, and so it's coordinating that effort to work together is really the largest lesson I think that we've learned in this. All right.
Yeah, thank you. And you know, to add to Jim's point, I think, you know, just looking at the amount of people here at the conference, you know, there's really a lot of people that are now going through the validation process. This is something that you know, really kind of comes in waves, and so really a lot of the pre-work that you can do is going through that is really going to help you in this process. Because I think if you just go to an app store and you haven't really done your due diligence, this is something that is really going to take a lot of time, because the EHRs are incredibly busy right now. They have a lot of people submitting, and whatever pre-work that you can do is just going to make that go more quickly. So, you know, I think as part of that validation process, so we've gone through the Cerner App Store and the Epic App Orchard, and we're validated on both of those areas. We're working on Allscripts and other EHRs for this application. Really, sort of the validation steps, kind of the key ones that you'll need to work with. One is, you know, be prepared for a very, very rigorous security audit. This is something that, you know, as Smart on FHIR is very exciting, but keep in mind that your applications can be embedded in the EHR, and a lot of times if you do this well, the end user is not going to know, it's going to look seamless for that. And the EHRs are going to be very, very thorough about what do they do to make sure in validating all of your security, particularly you're dealing with patient education. You're going to have a lot of testing, of rework. You have to prove that, and it's also not just when you get validated for the first time. Ongoing, you're going to be monitored, and you're going to have to be going through the security areas. So make sure that you've got you know, really detailed threat model, that you've got your security documentation, and you know, this is something that's made us better as a company, and I think that we're excited about that. But like I said, that if I had any advice to you, this is going to be the longest part of that process of something that you want to go through, and a very important one. As far as technology review, you know, really the focus of the technology review is how you're using the APIs, you know, within that EHR store. And so, you know, the reviews that you're going to be doing with the EHRs is, you know, are you optimally using the APIs? They may give you feedback on how you're making those calls, and you know, you're going to they're not going to do a code review of your application. They're going to look at the integration points. And so just, you know, detail out what are those integration points, how you use that data. And again, whatever early documentation you can submit ahead of time, it's just going to make that process go faster. Operations review, this is something that, you know, if your application is part of an EHR, you're going to be asked a lot about what's your process if your application's down? What's your process if people have feedback? What's your process for submitting updates? Oftentimes, you know, we have a very, very quick release schedule for these things, but a lot of our healthcare institutions, they want to have detailed updates about what are you going to be pushing out? What are the enhancements? You can't just sort of roll something out and tell them afterwards. You know, these are things that you need to provide to the HR of, you have a standard process for that. What is the feedback mechanism? A lot of times issues would go up through the help desk at the institution, or maybe go through the HR and come to you. You know, this is something that, you know, you should also have kind of your, just kind of organizational plan, your account management structure. You know, what are things that, you know, any clinician can do if they've got questions there. And then lastly, sort of a user experience review as well, is that, again, if you're launching your application and it's nested within that experience, you're going to have a review, and the EHRs are going to give you feedback on tweaks and updates that you can make to really make it more optimal within that flow. You know, you can have a great user experience, but if you sort of drop it into a window that doesn't match the experience within that system, you know, it's going to be confusing for those end users. And a lot of times, things like on the depart process, you know, we've got clinicians who are sitting there with patients or working to check people out, and if there's something that's confusing or mismatched, you're going to hear about it right away. So those are, you know, you're going to have to take a lot of feedback and make changes, and you know, it's exciting to see this when people are starting to use it. But you know, clinicians aren't shy in letting you know if something's not working for them. So really on the customer implementation, this is something that we're in process, just wrapping up with multiple Cerner customers and Epic customers right now today. I think that the environment setup and the configuration, this is something that is probably one of the longest parts of the process if a customer has not done a Smart on FHIR app before. So I would say we're finding it if somebody has actually done an application before, this part goes very quickly. But if it's the first time that they've done it, there's a lot of configuration that they need to do with the EHR. And so hopefully as more of us in the app community start implementing these, this process will go a lot faster. But just keep in mind that the IT groups, and we all know this in working with our customers, are really taxed. It's not uncommon, for some of these customers to have like a list of a year in advance of IT projects. And so sometimes it's really hard when you just want to have access to one piece, but you've got to get into the queue and work with those groups. So I would say that start working with your customers, get very, very specific implementation task lists of what you need them to do. We work on those implementation guides, or what are the configurations they can set up. Because a lot of times you just suddenly, you get a chance, you've got to go in and you say, all right, here's all the steps that I need you to put into place. And it's going to be difficult sometimes with a very busy organization where, if you implement it and then you have to implement something again or make another change, getting all those things that you need the customer to do right away early on. And so, as part of that, once the environment is set up, you've got the integration testing and then the workflow configuration. So really focus on getting your application launched, having all the necessary calls, being able to do the write back, and then do that workflow setup. This is a lot of times very specific to not just a client, but individual departments. And I'd really recommend starting with a particular department, working with them, and then expanding out to the organization. If you start with a hospital and you have every group, that's a lot of groups to try to coordinate. Again, if you're part of the workflow, this is something that gets a lot of attention, and something that, I think that if you have a particular group that's using it and gives that feedback, then it's something that, it makes it easier for you to start rolling it out to other areas. Clinician training, and make sure that you've got sort of those champions and those kind of power users that are used to your application. They can help you to train that organization. Kind of our model is really kind of more of a train the trainer. So we record some videos, we do some initial trainings, but the customer would then kind of train those groups outside. And then again with the rollouts, this is something that it makes it easier if you once you have the application all set up, the EHRs can kind of enable that to different groups and kind of coordinate and stage those to roll that out. So all in all, it's been a really exciting process. As Jim said, the EHRs have been great to work with, but kind of these are big, complex organizations. These are sometimes as a small, nimble vendor, you think, oh, we can get this out in a matter of weeks on our end, but kind of working with a big healthcare organization, this just takes time, and you have to do your due diligence. So I would just stress, early concept testing, get that customer feedback early, and have a very detailed step guide of what you need the customers to do. So.
We have a couple minutes for questions.
All right, so I'm Rachel from Dynamic Health IT. We are a company located in New Orleans. I usually travel with a development team. I oversee our development team. We are specialized in EMR system integration. We handle interoperability solutions for the EMR systems. We have 3 products. I think it just switched for me. Okay, we have 3 products that bolt on to EMR systems. We came into the industry back in 2013. We were working with an EMR vendor on interface engine work, and they came to us. Seth Gudeman from Empower Systems said, you know what, we have to do meaningful use. Okay, what is it? How does it work? What are you talking about? So, and then he said, I'm going to send you some links. Okay, so he sends the links over. We start looking at it. Okay, well, Seth, we can do this. Okay, you have 3 months for 11 tools. No problem. Growth chart, the whole works. So from that point on, we worked with different EMR systems that had interface engines that had to keep up with the market. We do take in Epic CCDAs and Meditech and Cerner, but that is not our focus. Our focus is ONC certification for EMR vendors that are specialty. So we have leading chiropractic, leading ophthalmology, and the leading general practice EMR system. So that's our clientele, but we do have mom and pop shops as well. And balancing between those two is a little difficult sometimes. Usually what happens is the bigger EMR systems have more resources, so your permissions work out fast and you're in the system. Some of them have no security and they're like, here's your test server, go ahead, do what you need to do, make this work. And then they don't want to talk to you, or they want you just handle the whole process. So we do that. Our team is, it's how we handle our process. So Connect EHR is bolt-on software that handles 2014 edition, CCDA, immunization, registry connections. Then we have CCRM Solutions, which we put on FHIR about 3 years ago. We put a couple of measures on FHIR. So if you're familiar with quality measures, we took our quality measure solution, took measure 65, and provided it with the data via FHIR resources. That was really cool. Other people with bigger budgets undertook that project and are still working on CCDA on FHIR. I'm sorry, CQM on FHIR. Our newest product, Dynamic FHIR, came because of the need to certify G7 through 9, which our vendors, what is it? I have an API already. Why do I have to use FHIR? Well, you don't have to use FHIR, but you should, and this is why. And so we talked them through the process, and we mentioned, well, where's the app that I'll plug this thing into? So you're going to make me develop this. Well, we developed it for them, but give us your CCDA. So we take on the CCDA on FHIR, and we put it on the fly. So there's no resources being stored other than the flat file XML, and then we provide the resources when the patient requests the resources. So we plan to bolt on with Apple. We have about 25 EMR systems that use our FHIR, and they're going to use our FHIR and need an app. So we're like, okay, so how do we test this? Well, we'll use Postman. We'll go through testing. We're going to use Postman. Everybody knows Postman? No. No one in the EMR system knows Postman, not even the developers. So do we teach them a new tool, or do we give them an easier tool? So we decided to give them an easier tool. Kind of went through all this. I don't follow slides, by the way. I just like to talk about what we're doing and how to help y'all do what y'all need to do for clients. But for the most part, we log in. We're using OAuth to the system. We use OpenID, and we also, last week and the week before, Twitter and Google logins as well to our FHIR API. There is, so I talked about FHIR on the fly. This is a CCDA. I don't know if you've seen it before, but this is a CCDA that can be adjusted and manipulated by the user. Now, we wanted to put this in a portal. Anybody have an idea why you don't put this in the portal, in the patient portal? Because the patients move everything around, and then they call tech support, and they say, I can't find my allergies. I can't find anything. Because you can turn it off and you can turn it back on. We put this in the EMR side because the doctors want to see this. They want to see and be able to manipulate. It's also a requirement, ONC requirement. But for the most part, this, that was the CCDA that we were using in our last testing. So this is we decided to do a prototype. We've got to test this. We need to go through testing fast and furious with FHIR. We don't want it's an API. It should be fast. You should just be able to show it. So we developed an API that would, client side, because our clients were saying, how do I show this? What do I have to do? I'm not using Postman. So we developed a prototype for client side that you can just go through the steps quickly. As you can see, there's all the sections of the CCDS document, and those are all the sections that we have on FHIR. So when you're doing this, it's really important not to, I know everybody's sticking to, I'm going to say it's really important. Everyone's sticking to Orgonaut or Core, US Core, thank you. For the most part, we didn't. We're using the UDS 3, and we're not in Orgonaut 2, so we had to manipulate the program to pull in the data we needed to meet meaningful use certification, well, to meet ONC certification 2015. So once we did that, we were kind of ahead of US Core for a little while, trying to find resources, looking through the entire FHIR organization, trying to find the resources we needed. US Core came along, and we mostly have all US core. Now, the CCDA document that you have to provide, G9 of ONC certification, is a full document. So we did use Orgonaut for that because the reference is available. So in this process, I'd put this up here because if you're working on this and you need a way to see if your CCDA works and if you can actually get resources from FHIR servers that are certified, this is a process, and the slides will be provided later, but a process that you can drop us your CCDA, we'll give you a login, and you can see your resources. We also would be more than happy to share our knowledge and help you through the process. We attend the Connect-a-thons, the implementation-a-thons, and we're there because we are a small company in New Orleans. And without the community, we wouldn't be where we are today. Everybody here has been so helpful, having CMS, ONC, and also just Epic, Meditech. This is where you come if you want to make sure that you're doing what the industry is doing. So I say this is where you find out what everybody's doing, but for the most part, the Connect-a-thon, head down, give me your data, can I take in your data? If you haven't been, you need to go. So for the most part, the FHIR development challenge pain points we had was the references, the CCDA references, pulling those over into and untangling the code. So much data comes in the human text readable, not in the machine readable. We all know that. The references are used to pull, well, maybe you don't, but you'll find out when you do this. So the references that you pull in are going to be hard sometimes. You're not going to always get your dosage where you should get your dosage in the machine readable because they might have put it in the text. It should be in the machine readable. You should send it through a test tool, send it back to them and tell them, make this a better CCDA. Our clients can because we bolt on and provide the CCDA, but if you're dealing with a client that has Meditech or Cerner and the data isn't configured or they're not mapped properly, it's not the EMR system's problem. It's the implementation problem, and they haven't done the work to get the mappings in place so that the CCDAs look the way they need to. So get the right people on the call and get those fixed. So we do take in file-based CCDs as well, not just the ones we create. Let's see, make sure I didn't skip anything on that. We talked about all the implementation. Some of the best practices, now this is minimum on us because we came to the Connect-a-thons and we figured it out and we were kind of ahead of the app development requirement because we wanted to do something to provide FHIR. We just didn't know where in the market we sat. We came to the first FHIR Connect-a-thon and like, how do we fit here? What do we do? So that's where we were in the market at the time. We were just learning, and outreach is very important. So with the tools we're using, so we have, it was real important for our team when we take them on. It's about a 3-month training process to learn what is a CCDA, what is ONC, and how does meaningful use work with that. So we went through that process with our teams and trained and made sure we had a CCDA FHIR team. Not the CQM team, not any other team. We're doing CCDA on FHIR. And then we put FHIR on the fly. While doing that, we used the single most helpful tool, which was .NET, and using FHIR and the Happy Server. A lot of information came from that and gave us what we needed to go through the process. We also used Notepad++. Graham Greaves has on his website for his server, he has the Notepad++ plugin. You might have heard of it. If you didn't, check it out. Very helpful. When transforming that CCDA, it's really easy to want to just gravitate to just make it work. They hear me say that a lot. Can you just make it work? Because I do oversee the development team, and we want to do that. But if you do just make it work, make sure you know why it works. Make sure you know that it's industry standard. And if it isn't, fix it. And that's where implementation-a-thons and Connect-a-thons help out. Also, the working group meetings I started attending because, and I would just do, Connect-a-thons, implementation-a-thons, and go home. I realized that we're connecting to over, 25 EMR systems, or probably how many systems are we touching? Okay, now I need to make change. We need something changed. We need a difference made in the standards. Well, that's where you go. The working group meetings help you get to that point. I'm a big advocate here, I think, huh? Okay. So just real quick about, we are not an app company. We don't pretend to be one. We hope to be in Apple within the next 3 months. We have to downgrade to Orgonaut 2, and I say downgrade because we're at 3 to 2. And we also do OAuth and Open ID, but I'm not sure if it's smart. And we will be smart at the next Connect-a-thon. I passed it to my team. We've seen smart for 5-6 years now at HIMSS and everywhere we go, but our customers aren't asking for it. We're not doing it. We need to do it. So we're going to figure that out. I think we have it. I just haven't tested against the tools yet. So this is an API that we prototyped. I'm all about color, look, and feel. So that holds me up, and this is why we're not an app company. But the patient portal was real easy. You provide what the patient needs to meet certification is what we did, and then you build it as the client asks for it. And our product's been very successful because of that. We didn't put anything in there that wasn't needed. Do you need appointments? Well, maybe. Let's wait till they ask, and that's how. And then let's use FHIR for that. So we waited, and we're still at the point where our patient portal is in the leading public hospital in New York, and they don't need appointments in their portal. They don't want it. They don't want to manage it. So they're moving to Epic. Epic has appointments. We'll see how that goes. All right, so this is our app, but what I do want to show you is how you have to switch. You have to go from the medical side, the EMR side, to the patient side. And we all know this because if you have a patient portal, you have to make things user-friendly for the patient. It's really tough for a development team that's been working with EMR systems for a while to say, okay, I need you to make this so a patient understands it. Let's go with some icons that make sense. The doctors, for the most part, learn where things are in the EMR, and if you move a box, they know it, and they let you know. Or a patient, you just want it to be very simplistic. So that was our plan. Like I said, we're not an app company. But trouble hooking up FHIR to an app. Let's talk about that for a minute. So the problem that we had for the most part was the concerns, the differences between CCDA and FHIR. For instance, the sex or the ethnicity. Check that out. How do you show diagnostics, diastolic and systolic for a patient? What makes more sense? The doctor wants to see it one way, patient another. And then we went on, and I have the rest of it here, but I got my 5-minute warning, and I don't want to take up all the time. So I have some information about the templates and the wireframes. This is really important because how in the app, how do you show things? How do you hook up to the back end? And we were using Xamarin because it was easy. There's an open source tool, other open source tools, but Xamarin does it best. My learning experience for this trip is my Apple has what they gave me when I left the building because that's where our Apple server is. So my app on the Apple looks like that. My app that I have now, I'll switch, that's what you're seeing here, has the logo I want. It has the sections I need. It has dosage because the other one didn't. It has all the information I needed because I could download it from Google, double-click on the APX file, and on my phone instantly have the update from the client. So we're not in the store. Like I said, this is a prototype, but I thought that was very interesting because I didn't know that I can't get the Apple one updated as easily. And it's probably related to security and other measures that we haven't approached yet. And I'll have more information about that soon. So we are going to continue educating on this through our blog. And I'm going to skip through these because we're running out of time. But our blog is here. And every FHIR Connect-a-thon and implementation, CCDA implementation-a-thon, if you're not there, I am. And I will be blogging, or our team will be blogging about the information to keep you updated in our learning experience.